What do you want to do when you leave school? On the face of it, it sounds a simple, straightforward, and fairly obvious question, doesn't it? Kind of question that a parent, teacher, concerned adult would ask any young person just during those final years of school, before they reach that transition point, before they leave and do whatever it is they're going to do. As a parent, you've probably asked your son or daughter that in the last few days or the last few weeks, especially if they're closing in on that transition point. If you have, I would say that you've probably had quite a vague answer in reply. Sure, there are some people who know exactly what they want to do and they're very definite about it. But I'd have to say they're in the minority. In my experience of 25 years working as a career practitioner, I would say that these are some of the answers that you would probably likely hear, having interviewed hundreds, if not thousands, of young people. Well, I don't know. I'm just going to keep my options open at the moment. This is a really important decision I have to make. I don't want to rush into it, so I might just see how things pan out. Or they might say something like, look, I think I might wait until after my exams. I might make a decision there. The reality is, if you ask a young man who's aged 17 or 18, the chances are they're just going to shrug their shoulders and maybe give a grunt. And that's about all you're going to get. Young people are really interesting, aren't they? So a couple of years ago, I took a step back and I started to ask young people, why do you feel like this about this question? Why do you give the answers that you do? It's very clear they do not like this question. In fact, many of them say, I really, really hate that question. I dread it. What they do know is that the closer they get to that transition point, when they leave school, they're going to get asked that question an awful lot of times and by a lot more people. What do you want to do when you leave school? And what they say is, it brings up this uncertainty and confusion and anxiety. Because what they know is the question is not, what are you going to do straight after school? It's about, what are you going to do in life? What are you going to do for a career? And the way they feel anxious about it is because the picture of what they want to do, it's not stable and coherent. It changes quickly and it changes often. And that confuses them. And they don't know how to explain that to people. So the answers they give are vague because that's exactly how they feel. The reality is, though, how many of us at 18 would be able to have answered the question any differently? I know I probably wouldn't have done. At 18, what I do remember is I had this notion of joining the Air Force. I'd had it for a couple of years. I have no idea where it came from, and I don't know where it went because I never did join the Air Force. What I do remember, though, was I was being strongly encouraged to go to university, both by my parents and by my school. My parents were from working class families in England. University had never been an option to them, and it hadn't been for any of their close family. So I was being encouraged to go as one of the first in the family. And my school, pretty much like schools today, their view was if you're capable and able, you will go straight to university. So if people had said to me, what are you going to do when you leave school? When I was 18, I would have probably said something like, well, at this stage I'm probably going to go to uni, but I probably didn't know why I was going or what I was going to do. And if they'd have then said to me, well, that's good, so when you finish uni, what are you going to do then? I would have probably said, I don't know, I'll probably just keep my options open. I get a lot of phone calls from concerned parents, and they say to me, look, I've been having a chat with my son or daughter, and it's pretty clear they're not quite sure what's going to happen when they finish school. I wonder if you could have a bit of a conversation with them. A couple of years ago, they were really interested in this, and now they're not so sure. That seems to be not there. Or they say things like, look, it was this, and now they've changed their mind. It's something totally different. And I think they're going to change their mind again, and I don't know. Look, I find this really frustrating. And I'm confused and they're confused. Can you help them? I did have one lady, and she rang me and she said, look, my son just doesn't know what he wants to do. You've got to fix it. The interesting thing is, all those calls on the telephone usually end in the same way. Parents often say, hey, it'd be great if you could help them. Because, you know, when I was their age, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So as I say, a couple of years ago, I started to think about this a little bit more. I took a step back from my practice. And I started to wonder, maybe we're missing something. Why is it that these young, successful adolescents, and actually those who are not doing so well at school, why is it that they all seem to have this confusion, anxiety, or uncertainty about what to do next? Why is it that their parents, when they were saying they were the same age, why did they feel confused? And me, when I was that age, why was I unsure? It was about this time I had a chance conversation with a really good friend of mine, a colleague. Actually, she was running a workshop, and she introduced this idea of the young adolescent brain and the neuroscience behind it. So I got really interested in this when she started introducing the idea that maybe the adolescent brain at 18 is not as fully mature or developed as we think it is, and this might be having some impact on their ability to make decisions. I have to say, over the last 2 years, pursuing this line of thought, I've read an awful lot of scientific papers about the adolescent brain. I've read an awful lot of books too. I've sought out really knowledgeable people on this subject. I've asked them questions. I've clarified their answers. And all the time, I'm trying to understand what this science is saying, especially from my line of work, helping young people make career decisions at that transition point before they leave school and go and do something else. This is what I found out. Over the last 15 or 20 years, scientists have learned a great deal about the two main areas of the young adolescent brain. The prefrontal cortex, which sits behind our forehead, which is in effect the chief executive of the brain, and the limbic system, the emotional engine room. And what they've learned is that from puberty through to about 18, adolescence, and then 18 to 25, emerging or young adolescence, and then from 25 onwards, which we call later adulthood, the prefrontal cortex goes through huge neurological changes, where it starts to communicate better with and exert more control over the impulsive limbic brain. Slowly, over time, the brain starts to function more effectively and more efficiently. We become more adult and we become more rational. The problem is, there are no telltale signs within the brain as when this process starts at puberty and when it finishes somewhere in adulthood. The brain actually doesn't change colour. So the reality is, for someone who's about 18, who is becoming more rational and more adult, it's really a case of now you see it, and now you don't. The prefrontal cortex is really important. It houses our executive function skills. And these are the skills that allow us to do things like sift and sort information, decide what's relevant and what isn't, plan ahead, make decisions, pay attention to details, remember things. And really importantly, they're the skills that stop us saying and doing the wrong things. As adults, we spend 90% of our time in our prefrontal cortex. Sure, we do slip into our limbic brain, usually when we fall in love, when we sit a test or an exam, when we meet an old friend, have a glass of wine or three, certainly when we do TEDx talks. It's not that young people haven't got these executive function skills, or they can't use them. It's just that it's really hard for them at the age of 18 to control their impulsive limbic brain. And when their prefrontal cortex loses control of their impulsive limbic brain, we see it with those frequent outbursts, the erratic behaviour, and the risk-taking that makes us also fearful for young people. Young people sit in their limbic brain at 18, probably 90% of the time. In fact, do you ever want to hear it? If you do, sit next to them, a group of 2 or 3, maybe at a sushi bar. Sit behind them on the bus and listen. Listen how quickly they speak, how animated they get. And every third word is the word like. They often say, think of the brain like a car, as an analogy. For a young adolescent driver, a learner driver at the age of 18, their foot is hard down on that limbic brain on the accelerator. And the brakes, the prefrontal cortex, they're hardly ever applied. And if they are, it's pretty erratic and it's not very comfortable for everybody. The ride is really unpleasant. But slowly, over time, as they become more adult and rational, as the brain starts to function more effectively and efficiently, they know that they can take their foot off that accelerator and they can apply those brakes more gently and at the right time. And needless to say, the ride is a lot more pleasant for everyone. So now we know a little bit more about this science of the young adolescent brain. What do we do with it? How do I apply it to my line of work of, as I say, helping young people make career decisions? Well, I think the first thing is we need to tell young people more about it. I don't think it'll do any harm. In fact, I think it'll do a lot of good. And that's what I do. For the last 2 years, every time I've had a career discussion with a young person, I've talked to them about the prefrontal cortex, the limbic system, the executive function skills. I have to say, the look of relief on their face when they realise that there is a valid scientific reason for how they feel of being confused and unsure and anxious is pretty remarkable. I think we ought to know more about it. Parents, teachers, concerned adults. I think if we knew more about it, I think we'd probably be more patient with young people. I think we'd probably listen to them more and validate their thoughts and ideas as they try things out. And I don't think we'd be so quick to dismiss them when they seem to change their mind so quickly and so frequently. Career decision making is an incredibly complex process, but somehow we seem to have made it a really simple one. That you can decide on your career in 5 or 10 minutes, completing a quick test in a magazine in a waiting room. It's nothing like that. To make a good career decision, you need to know lots of things about yourself, your skills, your interests, your values, your personality, your character, your sense of purpose. How difficult must it be for a young person when those executive function skills are not working so effectively and efficiently to sift and sort what is relevant, what is appropriate, to plan ahead, to make decisions, to pay attention to the details, to remember things. How difficult it must be. So maybe, if we're going to be patient with them, sit with them, listen to them, help them do this. It's probably like putting a career jigsaw together, where the pieces on the table are things like skills, interests, values. The problem is, there really is no picture that stays stable that we are working from, and neither are they. And the pieces on the table, well, they keep getting added to and keep getting taken away. It's more skills and interests, and values, and a better sense of who they are starts to emerge. But slowly, we sit with them and help them put pieces together and see how they look and feel and ask them, they'll start to see a picture emerging. Yeah, sure. That picture may get thrown in the air with that impulsive limbic brain, but that's what we've got to do. Again, start, put the pieces together, see how they look and feel, and slowly over time, as that brain starts to function more effectively and efficiently, they'll be able to do it themselves, and they'll be able to see the picture that emerges. My one word of warning that is, if you want to sit with a young person and help them put their career jigsaw together, make sure it's their jigsaw you're putting together and not the one you want them to put together. Thank you.